Welcome back. It's time for video number 1 from unit number 10, and we're going to talk about purchasing a house. So, for a great number of people, this may be the most significant purchase in your lifetime. Content found in chapter 18 of your textbook. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and begin this thing and share some slides. All right, so that's an overview set for you. You'll notice that we've got 2 sections of content from the book. We're going to talk about mortgage payments, how those things are calculated. Again, the author likes the little chart method. We won't do that. We'll simply use a calculator. We'll make use of Excel. And we're going to wrap this down with the notion of amortization schedule. And we kind of saw a beginning of that at the last video from Unit 9, where we saw how interest charge comes off first every month, and then the amount left is to diminish the amount of principal, the amount owed. So that's a lovely little overview slide, formula for us as we crunch out some amortization tables. Some objectives for you. Again, you'll find these easily and conveniently in the overview section for this unit, but I put them into the PowerPoint because it gives you something to do while you're eating your pretzel sticks. All right, let's go. 18.1 monthly mortgage payment. I'll let you read down there, but it says it's a major purchase for most people. It's worth looking at all of your options when you secure a mortgage. And quite frankly, what you're looking at more is what's the interest rate and for how many years am I looking at taking that loan? Blanket statement by Dell. Generally, the fewer years you take, the less interest you're going to wind up paying over the time. And trust me, the amount you pay over that amount of time is staggering. Look, I realized after I typed this slide that most of you probably weren't even alive in 2010. It's kind of sad. But anyway, you've heard the oldsters talking about the subprime mortgage crisis. And what happened, unfortunately, is people were led to believe that they could afford a whole lot more house in terms of cost than their budget actually could accommodate. And when the rates went up on those loans, they got clobbered. They couldn't make the payments, and sadly, in many cases, they wound up losing their investment. And in this case, the investment was their home. So, when you're looking at making the decision, can I buy this house? Man, we all fall in love with properties. We all fall in love with how this looks. I love the granite countertops. But you got to sit down and say carefully, is it going to be able to be something I can put into my budget and not run the risk of losing things? All right, you'll also notice that according to this slide, that most of us don't have hundreds of thousands laying around the house unless you got rich Aunt Mabel who says, I got a few $100,000 anytime you need it, Sparky. So you're going to probably wind up having to make a down payment. Hopefully we can get to at least 20%. That does get us a little bit of a more favorable option. And then the rest we'll borrow. And that long span of time, maybe 30 years. We got to a place where a lot of places are now advertising 15 years. And you're going to find out that we've got a little chart coming up here shortly that shows you a lot of different aspects relative to mortgages. General consensus is, you pay more every month if you take it for less years, but you wind up paying less in interest charges over the time. But again, it's all relative to what you can afford coming out of that balance of your household budget every month for the payment. Because sadly, it's not just the mortgage payment you got to contend with. You got the Wi-Fi, you got to have something to stream your videos, so any number of expenses accumulate to your monthly outlay from your family budget. This is hard to see, and again, I think what you could probably do is open this thing and click some slides at your leisure. Pretty much the fewer number of years you can afford to take, the better deal it is to you in terms of interest charge. Graduated payment mortgages start with a lower rate, and then as time passes, the rate adjusts. Biweekly mortgage, I kind of like that because it's actually something that I took advantage of. So instead of making a payment once a month, you wind up making a payment every 2 weeks. So over the span of a year, you wind up in effect making more payments. Something to look at in terms of being able to save some money on the interest charge. Again, it's not for everybody. It's all relative to what your budget will accommodate. The last thing this chapter talks about is reverse mortgages, and you've probably all seen the commercials where they get this crusty old actor who talks to grandma and grandpa about, now that you've paid off your mortgage and in your later years, you want this much money to live with, you can take a reverse mortgage. I've always been a little skeptical, and I think a lot of times people with maybe not the best pieces of information sign on and sort of get hoodwinked. Um, the sad reality here is, the loan doesn't end until the person who's pulling out the money dies in most cases, and then their estate winds up having to square things. So, again, if you're looking at somebody says, well, is it a good idea? I think it's probably a better idea to have an investment program set up starting when you're young. Get that first paycheck, coming on a regular job in your young 20s. Get something set up and target it for your retirements so you get that money sitting there readily. Let's talk about calculating monthly payments for your mortgage. Your author does a lot here, and I'm going to invite you to look at page 476 to look at things. But you and I are going to use calculators as we run out here, and the formula is a little clunky. But again, if it's something that you'll have no issues with any scientific calculator or graphing calculator. We'll get around to Excel as we proceed into the unit as well. There's the formula to calculate your payment amount for your mortgage. PV is the actual amount of the loan. How much are you borrowing? As we've seen previously, I is the interest charge. In most events now, that would be for a month because you're talking about monthly payments. N would be the number of payments you're making to wipe out the mortgage. So if it's 30 years, you're going to make 30 times 12 or 360 payments. PMT is the amount you're actually calculating. How much is it every month to wipe out the loan that you're purchasing? All right. And if that formula looked familiar, it probably should have, because it's the exact same formula that you and I met in Unit 9 when we were calculating prices for vehicles. So that's good news. It's not a new formula for us per se. PMT is a built-in function in Excel, so you don't even have to create the formula. So I threw some information here about PMT for you when you're working in Excel. It uses three required parameters or three required arguments. You need to inform it what's the interest rate of the loan. You need to inform it how many payments the loan's going to take, and you need to inform it how much the amount you're borrowing turns out to be. The last two, the future value and the type, are things that you don't necessarily need to include. All right, example for us using formula. Fred's going to buy a lovely home in Exton. All right, $340,000. Fred's going to throw 20% down. He's going to borrow the balance from Best Bank. It's going to take 30 years to pay it back, and their mortgage rate this particular time is 7.5%. We're going to figure out what Fred's monthly payment turns out to be. So there's our formula. Let's grab some information we can use. The PV is the loan amount, and it's not 340 because remember, he's paying 20% down. So that $272,000 is exactly 80% of $340,000. So, all right, what about the interest charge? Remember, it's monthly. So we're taking the 0.075 and cutting it by 12 to find out the interest charge for each month. Number of payments is in fact 360. It's a 30-year mortgage, 30 times 12. Plug in line by dear old Dell. There it is. I'm going to take the next thing and just add the 1 and the 0.00625. Calculator gymnastics coming your way. Once again, make certain that your denominator is grouped. All right, so I left the parenthesis there kind of on purpose for us. All right, run some things with your machine, and I found that in this case, Fred's payment amount every month for his mortgage is $1,901.86. And that is certainly not chump change. And it's important to realize that it has nothing to do with his homeowner's insurance, nothing to do with his property taxes for school, nothing to do with how much he's paying Comcast for Wi-Fi. That's $1,901.86 every month for 360 months to a bank, so he can say that eventually at the end of the 30 years, this is my house. I own it free and clear. All right, $1,901.86. So an example of using the formula for us to calculate payments. I'm going to invite you to pop into the old resource folder. I set up a little Excel sheet that will take the values that you and I just considered, and you'll notice that I've entered them here in this slide for us. 0.075 is the yearly rate, and then the formula that I've built will actually change and create for us what the payment amount is. And that, my friends, wraps video 1. We'll be back soon for video 2 from Unit 10. See you then.